A existencia de máis de 6.000 linguas na Terra implica que con moita frecuencia dúas ou máis linguas coexisten nun mesmo territorio. Ese contacto entre linguas a miúdo deriva en conflicto cando os falantes dunha delas non poden utilizar a súa lingua con normalidade por causas políticas, relixiosas ou, como no caso que estudaremos a continuación, por culpa da economía.
I would like to talk to you about a new kind of apartheid developing in America today. Many years ago, I visited South Africa, a place where your skin color determined your success in life. South Africa was 90% black and less than 10% white. South Africa was separated by racial classification. Whites had privilege, blacks served for the benefit of whites. Today, in the United States of America, we are developing a new kind of apartheid. America's version of apartheid permits financially poor Americans to have their own servants. But this American apartheid is not about race or skin color, nor is it about ethnicity, for there are plenty of Hispanics who engage in this apartheid. America's new apartheid is not about gender either, for men and women are equally participating in it. And it is not, as some have suggested, about religion, for there are many Catholics as well as members of every religion in the world engaging in this version of apartheid. The American apartheid is about language. Spanish versus English. Those who speak English have privilege. Those who speak Spanish do not. Are we developing a society where a minority will control the majority, like the old South Africa? Are some American-born, U.S. citizen Latino children who are dominant in the Spanish language going to be the next generation of servants for the English speakers? Are Latinos deciding to forgo the American dream, retaining Spanish and living in poverty at the behest of the English speakers in America?
There's a huge controversy in New Mexico involving a hotel owner and his Spanish-speaking employees. Protesters are angry, accusing 63-year-old Larry Witten of discriminating against Hispanic workers at his hotel in Taos. Witten allegedly fired some employees who wouldn't follow his rules, which include no speaking Spanish in front of him, and even anglicizing their names, asking, for example, Marcos to call himself Mark.
Cando unha lingua como o castelán, neste caso, é un obstáculo para obter un traballo digno, pode levar os seus falantes a deixar de usala. Teñen que falar en inglés se queren ver cumpridas as súas xustas aspiracións de mellora económica e progreso social.
In fact, a study by researchers at Princeton and the University of California at Irvine have found that by the third generation, Spanish practically disappears from the Latino families. Historical and contemporary evidence seems to indicate, and this is from this study, I'm going to quote it for you now, historical and contemporary evidence indicates that English has never been seriously threatened as the dominant language of the United States. And it also says what is endangered instead is the survival of the non-English languages that immigrants bring with them to the United States. These are Mexican Americans who speak fluent Spanish. First generation, obviously 100% of them do because they've just arrived in the country. All right, then they have kids. Of those kids, 35 speak Spanish. Then they have children. Of that generation, only 17 speak Spanish. Fourth generation, only 5%. 5% is all of that generation that actually continues to speak Spanish. The rest have been Americanized. They're speaking only English.
É evidente que non todos asumen con resignación a minorización da súa lingua e unha progresiva perda de falantes. Coa intención de reverteren esa situación, demandan que a súa lingua sexa obrigatoria durante a escolarización dos seus fillos para que dela teñan un correcto dominio.
Sunnyside High School, where generations of students have struggled for their right to celebrate their Mexican heritage. Now their cultural identity is being put to the test again, this time by a ruling that's favored the English language over Spanish. For decades, Arizona schools have taught both languages. But following the passage of a law banning bilingual education, all classes are taught exclusively in English. Susef is from Mexico. Her first language is Spanish. While the rest of her classmates take the normal wide array of subjects, Susef has spent 4 hours a day during each of her 4 years in high school learning English. But she still prefers to speak Spanish.
También nos mezclamos con los que hablan inglés.
We mix with those kids who speak English and the ones who don't.
The concern is that she and many other migrant students are missing out on other important subjects, learning English at the expense of a wider education. A main problem for Spanish-speaking students is if they don't learn English, they're less likely to enter U.S. colleges and universities. 2 other states, California and Massachusetts, have brought in the same English-only laws. Teachers can even be taken to court if they teach any language other than English. Upon graduation, many immigrant students like Suseth plan to return to Mexico. Critics say Arizona's educational system keeps them marginalized, making it nearly impossible for them to kick off a new life in the United States. Frank Contreras, Al Jazeera, Tucson, Arizona.
Algúns pais demandan unha política lingüística que ampare a lingua máis débil, que asegure a súa pervivencia exixindo a presenza do castelán na escola, porque de non ser así, acabará sendo asociada só coa lingua que falan os pais na casa, rezan algunhas oracións ou cantan durante as sobremesas. Un castelán, por tanto, arredado da cultura e sen vocabulario técnico, que, daquela, non será útil nin apto para a vida moderna.
The little boy in the blue shirt doesn't speak Spanish. He doesn't understand much Spanish either, so he's not getting a lot of what his public school kindergarten teacher is saying.
You can see he's tracking what she's saying, but he doesn't have the words in Spanish to answer her.
The boy's name is Juan. 90% of the lessons in his class are taught in Spanish, only 10% in English. Juan's parents have chosen to put him in this class because they want him to be fluent in both Spanish and English.
For us, it was, how can we create an educational system that takes advantage of this prevailing culture in the community?
You see, at least 8,000 of the 10,000 residents in this agricultural community of Lindsay, California are Latino. School officials say 60% of this year's kindergarten classes are being taught this way. Kindergarten and first grade are taught 90% in Spanish. The idea is to focus on the majority of the kids' primary language first. By second grade, instruction changes to 80% Spanish, 20% English, and by 5th grade, it's 50-50. District officials say the program's been going for 10 years and students are not only learning 2 languages, but according to standardized test results, they're outperforming students taught in English only. There's even a waiting list to get into the program for students that want to come from outside the district.
Our oldest son has been in the program for 6 years now, and it's a wonderful thing to hear my son, not only speaking Spanish, but reading, writing it.
Despite the early focus on Spanish, English-only speaking children like Juan also do well, according to educators. It just takes a few months to get up to speed. The program's director says by the time all of these kids get to high school, they will be speaking, reading, and writing fluently in both languages.
Our students are headed for Berkeley and UCLA. I mean, our students are university bound. That's the kind of culture that we want to create.
O certo é que desde o outro lado, desde o lado da lingua forte, a primeira estrategia para evitar a normalización e, por tanto, a recuperación dunha lingua feble é, por suposto, impedir que esta acceda á escola ou diminuir a súa presenza en caso de que antes houbese unha política seria de bilingüismo.
But we begin tonight a controversial English-only policy that's led to a lawsuit against a Wichita Catholic school. One of the families involved claims their son was kicked out of school for failing to agree with the policy. KSN's Dana Hurtnicki joins us with the story tonight. Dana?
And the attorneys who filed the suit say they couldn't find a policy like this at any school in the nation. It bans anyone from speaking Spanish at any time during school. Adam Silva was a 6th grader at St. Anne's Catholic School in South Wichita until he refused to sign a pledge that he would not speak Spanish at school.
Why would you ban Spanish during lunch and recess? There's no reason for it except that you don't like it. You don't want it spoken. It's unfortunate, very sad. It's very hurtful for all the parties, including the community itself.
The Wichita Diocese, however, says the policy became necessary to maintain order within the school.
The issue was a behavioral issue where this young man, whose first language is English, he was born in the U.S., but was using Spanish with a small crowd of friends to speak ill of others, make derogatory comments about others in Spanish so that they wouldn't know what they were saying. There was no bullying. This is just the end of a long line of excuses for this policy. The reason given at that point by lunchroom staff was, this is America, this is what we speak in America. There was also an additional reason of, well, we don't understand what you're saying, and we really aren't comfortable with that.
But Solis says the idea that the Wichita Diocese would discriminate against Hispanics is absurd, especially given their long history of supporting minorities.
We just hope that we can get past this and it doesn't become a divisive issue.
But the Silvas say it already has.
Parents and children feel unwanted. They feel discriminated. They feel that it's not the same like it used to be.
Tras un cambio de legislación, en Estados Unidos xa non se permite a escolarización en castelán, porque así, din algúns, se facilita a inserción laboral dos latinos. Outros non o ven como un favor, senón como unha estrategia de asimilación lingüística e cultural.
Good day, fellow Americans. America has never been in graver danger. And one of the greatest dangers we face in keeping our republic unified is the fact that America is rapidly becoming a Tower of Babel. Don't you remember the Bible when they were building this big tower and everybody was speaking a different language? They couldn't get it built. And we can't maintain this country unless we have a lingua franca, a common language that everyone can speak and everyone can understand.
Get to what many believe is the real root of the argument when it comes to the language issue in the United States. The big fear among a lot of people who are promoting English-only laws in the United States, like Tom Tancredo, the congressman we were just talking to a little while ago, is that with all the Hispanic immigration, English, the language of this nation, will simply disappear. That's going to be overwhelmed by so many Spanish speakers that are coming to this country.
Ese medo atávico ao outro, ao estranxeiro ou ao inmigrante pode ser tamén utilizado arteiramente no proveito de intereses políticos, porque estimular eses medos pode ser moi rendível electoralmente.
There's no doubt that you can get along very nicely in this country without speaking another language. In fact, and I can tell you this as somebody who's been around the world, and I can't speak any languages, you can get around very well in the world with only speaking one language, but you cannot get along in America if you don't speak English. And that's a shame that to the Latin American people in this country who want to be successful, he was suggesting that it wasn't that important. It's extremely important that they learn English.
It's a language of success. I mean, certainly Bob Novak is right. If you don't speak English in America, you're going to have doors that will shut because you're not able to do the job. And most Americans, 83%, I have a poll here, disagree with the idea of America becoming bilingual.
Nunha situación como esta, é moi difícil a supervivencia dunha lingua débil. Resulta moi complicado artellar estrategias para a normalización dunha lingua, aínda tendo medios de comunicación desde onde poder denunciar estas políticas de prohibición e estigmatización.
Ahora pasamos con nuestro vicepresidente de Noticias, Eduardo Quesada, y su editorial de hoy.
¿Qué tal? ¿Cómo están? ¿Cómo es posible que todavía en estos días seguimos escuchando insultos dirigidos a todos los que hablamos español aquí en Estados Unidos? ¿Cuántas veces hemos discutido las historias de nuestros padres o abuelos en donde nos contaban que en su niñez los castigaban en la escuela por hablar español? Tampoco puedo olvidar la forma en que un juez americano se expresó sobre nuestro idioma. Dijo fríamente, jamás algo importante ha sido escrito en español. Hace 12 años, otro juez declaró que era abuso infantil el que una madre le hablara español a su hija de 5 años. Pero en días recientes hubo otro insulto, y nada menos que del expresidente de la Cámara de Representantes, Newt Gingrich. Gingrich dijo que la gente debería aprender el inglés, que es el idioma de la prosperidad, porque el español es el de los barrios, como diciendo que es el de los pobres. Señor Gingrich, por favor, Eso es un insulto para todas las familias de habla hispana y para los que viven en los barrios, pero además es un insulto para los más de 300 millones de habitantes alrededor del mundo que hablan español. Gracias, les habló Eduardo Quesada.
Empecé a facer as prácticas nunha clínica dental na Coruña e o primeiro que me dixeron foi que tiña prohibido falar o galego nesa clínica. Cando xa estaba de baixa da empresa anterior, chámame por teléfono para decirme que quedaran uns flecos pendientes por aclarar e que mos quería comentar antes de empezar a traballar. E o fleco era que non podía falar en galego, nin cos meus compañeros de traballo, nin cos clientes, moito menos, nin de ninguna maneira. Escribir moito menos, que ali había unha maneira de traballar e que todo se facía en castelán. Ela dicía que lle parecía increíble, porque eu dixenlle que me iba a costar un pouco, que eu era galego falante e que me iba a costar un pouco que entendera. Ela dicíame que pero eso é increíble, como pode estar sucedendo eso, estamos vivindo en España tense que falar o español, cousas absurdas, que me parecían absurdas. Non hai discriminación, non, que va. O sea, ese señor xa consideraba que eu non era apta porque falaban galego.
Personally, for me, this is very close to my own situation and my heart. My parents don't speak a lick of English, and they're watching me right now on TV, but they don't understand for the most part what I'm saying. My children don't speak any Spanish, and yet I'm right in the middle. Is this typical of the assimilation pattern in the United States? It happened with Italians and Germans, as we mentioned. Will it happen as well with everyone in this country, like myself, whether they're from Mexico or another place, that speaks Spanish?
That's what the data show. It's very difficult to maintain Spanish across the generations. It really requires you to set up a private school system to educate people in Spanish and teach them how to read and write in the language. Because from what you learn at home, you simply learn household Spanish, and that's not a full and complete Spanish. And that's why it survives more in Miami than any place else, because the wealthy Cubans there have set up their own schools. But of course, the second and third generations also speak flawless and perfect English.
Yeah.
Moitas veces, o ser humano actúa en contra dos seus verdadeiros intereses e desoe unha voz intelixente que valora o bilingüismo non como un impedimento, senón como unha valiosa ferramenta.
I don't understand when people are going around worrying about we need to have English only. They want to pass a law. We want English only. Now, I agree that immigrants should learn English. I agree with that, but understand this, instead of worrying about whether immigrants can learn English, they'll learn English. You need to make sure your child can speak Spanish.